If you've ever wondered why the debate over so-called weapons of war gets so heated in Washington, this hearing gives you a pretty good example. One side is arguing that certain firearms should be restricted, while the other side is challenging the very definition being used to justify those restrictions. And once the firearms are actually compared side by side, the argument gets a lot more complicated. Welcome back to the Political Brief. Make sure you subscribe, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments, because this debate raises some serious questions about what lawmakers are actually trying to regulate.
Yield to a member on the Democratic side that served in a combat area designated zone and deployment of our country. Anybody in the Democratic side?
Mr. Steube, what's the purpose of the question? My father, no, let me finish. Let me finish.
Because I'm going to make a point and you're taking my time. So I will yield to any member who
because
deployed.
I'm offended at your suggestion that somehow if we've not served in a combat zone that we don't care about protecting the lives of our constituents.
Has nothing to do about how you
to me.
And for our family members who have lost blood, they should be respected.
Reclaiming my time. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like 40 seconds
I've seen
back on
my
the clock.
constituents die in battle.
It's Mr. Steube's time. Gentleman is recognized.
And I will ask for 40 additional seconds that I was taken. Okay, so I served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. I served in the Army, and there's a lot of talk in Washington about weapons of war. And my purpose of yielding to one of my colleagues who may have served was to ask them a specific question of what type of firearm were you issued when you were deployed. And the answer to that question is a true what would be defined as a weapon actually used in war, has a selector switch on it for fully automatic, 3-round burst, and semi-automatic. So when I deployed in 2006 in Operation Iraqi Freedom, we were issued M4s in the United States Army. Those M4s had a selector switch on them. Those selector switch allow you to have fully automatic, 3-round burst, or semi-automatic. Those firearms are not allowed for purchase in the United States today. So this cascading of weapons of war, what I was issued, and again, I would ask any person that served in a deployed environment, you are issued weapons that allow for fully automatic and 3-round burst. That is not available for purchase in the United States, and that is not what the Democrats are attempting to ban today, because that's already banned. What we're talking about is a semi-automatic rifle that only is used in a semi-automatic form. So behind me is a typical AR platform weapon, and you can't see it because it's on this side, not the other side, that has a selector switch on it. That selector switch is only for fire or not fire, safe or not safe, and that is for a semi-automatic operation of the weapon, which means every time I depress the trigger, a round comes out of the firearm. All right, next slide, and just move it over. This is the most popular handgun in the United States that was purchased is a Glock 19. It functions in exactly the same way as this rifle. It's a semi-automatic, just like that's a semi-automatic. The rifles not available for purchase don't have a selector switch for 3-round bursts or fully auto. This is a semi-automatic handgun. As quick as I depress the trigger of this Glock 19, a round comes out of the chamber. The functionality between that weapon and this weapon are exactly identical. There is no difference. So you're banning a class of weapons that you don't like the look of, not because of functionality, not because of how fast a round comes out of the weapon, just because you don't like the way that they look, because they function exactly the same. Now move this one over one. So now this is a Glock 19. Glock 19 comes with a 15-round magazine, which under this bill is legal, although it's interesting that a couple weeks ago, you banned 10-round magazines, and then you changed it to a 15-round magazine. It's interesting to understand the thought process there, but that is for another time. This is a 6-hour P320, which some of you probably saw in one of the hearings on the magazine bans. I showed my P320. This comes with a 20-round magazine. So under this bill, because it has a 15-round magazine ban, this gun would be banned because you wouldn't be able to use it. Again, it functions exactly the same as that gun. It functions exactly the same. As fast as you depress the trigger, is as fast as a round comes out. So now the next one. So that gun would be banned. That would be okay because you can put a 15-round magazine in it. This is a lever action. Under this bill, lever actions apparently are okay, but semi-automatic AR platform rifles are not okay. So we're going to discriminate against the type of firearms that we're going to use, despite the fact that the functionality is the same. The only difference here is after you depress the trigger and a round comes out, you have to reload using the lever action, which saves you maybe half of a second. The next one, which is also legal, is a tubular. This is a tubular 22, which, again, and Mr. Massey did a good job of highlighting how ridiculous the calibers of the bullets are. The Democratic majority is discriminating against some of the most popular weapons in the United States simply because they don't like the way they look, not because of the way they function. And there are so many Americans that are confused when they see the semi-automatic rifle that the Democrats want to ban as being fully automatic. It's not. You can't purchase that. It's illegal. It is not a weapon of war. A weapon of war has a fully automatic switch or a 3-round burst. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What we just watched was a pretty intense exchange, and I think there's an important distinction that often gets completely lost in these debates. The congressman makes a very straightforward argument. If you're going to call something a weapon of war, then you should understand what that actually means. He points out that when American soldiers are deployed into combat, they can be issued military firearms capable of fully automatic fire or 3-round burst. Those are fundamentally different from the semi-automatic rifles being discussed in many proposed firearm restrictions. And from a conservative perspective, that distinction matters. Because words matter, especially when those words are being used to justify legislation that affects millions of law-abiding Americans. The argument being made here is not that every firearm is identical. Clearly, they're not. Different firearms have different designs, capabilities, and intended uses. The point is that simply describing a semi-automatic rifle as a weapon of war doesn't automatically make it function like a military machine gun. A semi-automatic firearm fires 1 round each time the trigger is pulled. That's the basic operating principle. And that's where the congressman tries to make his strongest comparison. He places an AR-style rifle next to a Glock handgun and argues that, at the basic firing mechanism level, both are semi-automatic. Pull the trigger, 1 round fires. Pull it again, another round fires. Now, that doesn't mean the firearms are identical. Obviously they aren't. But it does raise a legitimate question. If the concern is specifically how quickly a firearm can fire, why would the focus be placed on one particular appearance or configuration rather than the actual operating mechanism? That's the question I think lawmakers need to answer clearly. Because if legislation is going to restrict a firearm, the government should be able to explain precisely what dangerous capability is being targeted. Is it the rate of fire? Is it magazine capacity? Is it the caliber? Is it the possibility of rapid reloading? Or is it primarily the appearance and design of the firearm? Those are very different arguments. And I think this is where the hearing becomes especially interesting. The congressman points out that certain other firearms, including lever-action rifles, could remain legal under the proposal, while a semi-automatic rifle could face restrictions. His argument is essentially that the legislation is drawing a line between firearms based partly on their design, even when some of their basic firing characteristics overlap. Now, supporters of gun restrictions obviously have their own arguments. They can argue that certain semi-automatic rifles are widely available, can accept detachable magazines, and can be configured in ways that make them particularly dangerous in mass casualty situations. Those concerns deserve to be debated seriously. But here's my problem with the political conversation. Too often, the debate becomes emotional before it becomes technical. Instead of explaining exactly what a proposed law would accomplish, politicians sometimes rely on phrases designed to create an immediate reaction. Weapons of war, assault weapons, military-style firearms. Those phrases may sound frightening, but they don't necessarily tell the average citizen how the firearm actually operates. And if we're going to pass federal laws affecting constitutional rights, I believe Americans deserve more than emotionally charged labels. They deserve specifics. What exactly is being banned? Why is it being banned? What measurable problem will the restriction solve? And what happens to people who already legally own the affected firearms? Those questions shouldn't be controversial. Another moment that caught my attention was the discussion about magazine capacity. The congressman highlights what he describes as changes in the proposed limits. pointing out that one capacity restriction could be considered acceptable while another firearm with a larger magazine would fall under the ban. Whether you agree with his interpretation of the legislation or not, the larger point is worth considering. Lawmakers need to explain the reasoning behind these thresholds. Why one number? Why not another? What evidence shows that the specific limit will make Americans safer? That's how serious legislation should be debated. And this is where I think the conservative argument is strongest. The Second Amendment isn't supposed to depend on whether a politician personally likes the appearance of a firearm. Constitutional rights aren't popularity contests. At the same time, supporting the Second Amendment doesn't mean refusing to discuss firearms policy altogether. We absolutely should be willing to talk about criminal misuse, unlawful possession, violent offenders, mental health interventions, background checks, and enforcement of existing laws. But there is a huge difference between holding criminals accountable and assuming that millions of law-abiding gun owners should lose rights because someone else committed a crime. If somebody uses a firearm illegally, punish the criminal. Don't automatically treat every responsible gun owner as if they're a potential criminal. And that's why hearings like this matter. Because when lawmakers start using broad terminology to describe firearms, the public needs to pay attention to what those words actually mean in practice. This congressman is essentially saying, don't tell Americans you are banning weapons of war when the firearms you're discussing don't possess the same firing capability as the military weapons being referenced. You may still believe additional restrictions are necessary. That's a legitimate position, but make the argument honestly. Don't blur the technical differences just to make the politics easier. Personally, I think that's the standard every politician should be held to, regardless of party. If you're going to restrict a constitutional right, make your case with facts, evidence, and measurable outcomes. Don't rely on scary terminology. Don't demonize millions of citizens. And don't pretend that technical distinctions don't matter simply because they complicate the political narrative. At the end of the day, Americans deserve a debate based on reality rather than slogans. Because once politicians start defining constitutional rights based on appearances and emotional language, we should all be paying attention. And that's exactly why this hearing deserves a much closer look. Let me know what you think in the comments. Was the congressman right to focus on the difference between military automatic firearms and civilian semi-automatic firearms? Or do you think lawmakers have a legitimate reason to regulate certain semi-automatic rifles differently? Subscribe to the Political Brief for more political reactions, congressional hearings, and conservative analysis. I'll see you in the next one.